Hi friends, in this video I'll be showing you Python lists and how it works. List is a type of data structure used for organizing, storing, processing, and retrieving data. List is Python's built-in data structure, and it works like array in other programming languages. How do we define list? List can be defined by storing related elements or non-related elements in square brackets, which can then be assigned to a variable. Okay, let's go straight to the IDE and let me show you how lists are defined. Let's take, for instance, we want to define a list of fruits. So we'll go by defining a variable first, and square bracket, apple, bananas, grapes. That's it. We have a list containing 3 fruits: apple, bananas, grapes, and like that. And then let's try to print out fruits. Print fruits. Run this. It prints out apple, bananas, and grapes. And let's try to print or create another list of numbers. Say nums equal to 1, 2, 45, 5, 11, 24, and 54, like that. If I try to print this out, print nums, have the list of numbers showing on in the terminal. All right, that's how list is defined. Moving further, list can be used to store homogeneous element as well as heterogeneous element. Homogeneous, like we have in the preceding examples in fruit and in nums list. Homogeneous lists are when a list contains elements of the same data type, while heterogeneous is when a list contains elements of different data types. For instance, okay, let's say list 1, and that example equal to can contain a float, it can contain a string, bananas, a num 45, and it can as well contain another list, say 1, 4, and 6. Then don't forget to close the bracket, right? And that's it. If I print this out, let me print list 1. So that's it. List 1 has the data types with different data types. As we have a float, a string, we have an integer, and we have another list enclosed in the same square bracket. All right. Do we access an element in a list? You can access an element in a list by calling the name of the list followed by the index position of the intended element. For example, let's try to access bananas in this list. In fruit, what do? We call the name of the element fruit, then open and close square bracket. And what's the position of fruit? Like we all know in programming, programmers usually start numbering from 0. Apple is 0, bananas is 1, and grapes is 2. So we're trying to get bananas, and the index of bananas is 1. So we'll input 1 here. We can then try to print this out. Print fruit. All right. So we have bananas in the terminal. So that's how to access whatever element in whichever list you have or you're working with. You can as well access an element of a list starting from the end of the list using a negative indices. For instance, let's say we want to access the same bananas. What we can do is we can say -2, because we start counting from the end using from -1, because there's no -0. So if this is -1, this is going to be bananas is going to be -2. So -2. Let's try to print this out and see what it gives us. Same bananas. So let's go to the next thing, which is concatenating or joining 2 lists together, as in components of 2 lists, putting it into another list, right? Let's jump right into that. For example, we can have num1 equal to 2 for 60, 30, 76. and num2 equal to 88, 45, 62, and 78. So joining the two lists, num1 and num2 together, all we need to do is say we can assign this to a variable. Say num3 equal to num1 plus num2, right? If I try to print num3, print num3. So let's try this out. You can see in the terminal it prints out everything contained in num1 and every element contained in num2. It joined them together. We have 2, 4, 60, 30, 76. Then in num2 we have 88, 45, 62, and 78. So that's how to concatenate two lists in Python. All right. And the next thing is trying to see how we can add to a list and how we can delete from a list. In Python, we add to a list using some Python lists method. For instance, you can add another fruit to the end of this list using the append method. What's the append method? Say fruits that append orange. Because it's a string, it should be in either a single quote or double quote. Let's use a single quote. Let's print orange. Let's add orange rather to the end of the list. Then if we print fruit now, you can see orange has been added to the list. Like I said, append method allows us to add to the end of the list, but there's another method that we can use to add elements to whichever position we intend in the list. For instance, we can use insert method to add to fruit. So fruit, the insert, that's how it goes. The insert method takes two arguments. First is the index position. Say we want to add to position 2. We add 2, comma, cherry, right? So if I try to print fruit again, let's copy this from here and place it here. Try to print fruit, and then let's see what it gives us. You can see if you count from 0, apple is 0, banana is 1, cherry is now in position 2. It has pushed grapes to position 3 and orange to position 4. So that's how insert method works in Python. Like I said, we can add to a list and as well as remove an element from a list. How do we remove elements from a list? In Python, there is the pop method that allows us to remove the last element in the list. For instance, let's say we want to remove orange from this list, right? We just added orange. We can as well remove it. And how do we do that? Type fruit dot pop, open and close the bracket. All right. This one, because we are not deleting from any position, or we're not removing an element from any position, so we don't have to impute any argument. Imputing an argument here, it's optional. So if we try to print out the fruit list again, as you can see on the terminal, you see that if you notice that orange has been removed from the list. Another thing we can do is we can remove an element at whatever position we intend, right? Say we want to remove apple, that's position 0. We're going to be using the same pop method, pop, inserting the position of the element we want to remove, which is 0. And we are removing apple, right? You can see now our orange is back. It was appended here. We didn't comment this out and we didn't comment this out. So let's comment this out, these two out. Reprint this into the IDE. So what do we have left? We have, after popping apple, we now have just bananas and grapes. So I've mentioned 3 methods right now in list. All right. The first one is the append method that attaches an element to the end of the list. Then the insert method that inserts an element into whatever position you have intended. Then the third one is the pop method, which deletes the last element in the list. And if we give this an argument, which is the index of any element, it then deletes the element at this position. All right. So there are several other methods which we'll be talking about. I mean, list methods that we'll be talking about in this video. But before we go there, let's relax a bit and quickly check out some other stuffs or some other tricks in Python lists. You can access an element of a list to modify it, right? And you can as well iterate over all the elements in the list to modify each element using a for loop. I'll be going through this on the ID. So first, let's try to access an element in a list and change that element or replace the element with another element. All right. So how do we do that? Let's use this fruit example. I say fruits. For instance, we want to replace the oranges with something like, say, pineapple. How do we do that? We're going to get the name of the list first, which is fruits. Then in a square bracket, one thing we have to do is get the position of the element we want to replace, which is oranges. What's the index position of orange? As apple is 0, then oranges is 3. So we're going to type in 3 in the square bracket. Say is now equal to pineapples. Let me try to print out fruits. You run this. You can see instead of the oranges in position 3, we have pineapples. That said, another thing we can do is we can list out all the elements in fruits using a for loop. How do I go about this? Let me show you. For fruit, in fruit, then let's now print this out. Let's print fruits. Now take note of, right, I'm going to delete this s, right. Take note of the singular fruits here instead of the pluralized fruits we have in the for statement, right. Let me run this and you see the elements listed out in the terminal. You can see we have apples, bananas, grapes, pineapples, and mangoes. You can do whatever you want with each of these elements. You can add s to it, you can capitalize it. Okay, let's say want to change this to uppercase. I just need to do in the printout statement, I just need to do dot upper to upper, right? And that's it. If I run this, you see that each element has been modified to uppercase instead of the lowercase. So that's that. Let's try another example using the numbers. Let me just move this down to X. Say for I, or say for norm, in now we'll be using range len function. I think I talked about len in the length function in my previous video. So it's going to take a value or an argument, which is the norm list, right? So what we'll be printing out right now is we can decide to print out all the numbers or all the elements in the list. That's we print norm. Let's try this out. You can see, so it prints out the index of each element. If I want to print out the values in each index, what I need to do is num1, then you open and close the bracket and type num. We run this and it gives us the value of each element. That's 2, 5, 10, and so on. And we can modify all of this. Say I want to multiply this by 2, each element by 2. How do I do that? Let me type the multiplication symbol, which is the asterisk, and by 2. Running this, you can see that each element has been modified to give me 4 instead of the 2, 10 instead of the 5, 20 instead of the 10, and so on. That's how to use for loop to iterate over each element and at the same time to do something or to modify each element in the list. There's another thing I can do. Let me show you another example. Right? Say I want to print out the index and the value contained in each position. So how do I do that? So the first thing I'm going to be printing is I'm going to print out the index, which is the norm. All right. Then I'd like to use the F string in this. The F string allows me to format my string in some kind of way without modifying or without changing anything. So I'm going to enclose my values, I mean my index, inside a curly brace. Then the next thing we'll be printing out is the value living inside each of the index, which is another curly brace. Okay, before that, let me put a colon to indicate that this value belongs to this index. All right, another curly brace, num1, then close, open and close square brackets, num. That's it. If I try to print this out, before we print out, we need to close the quotation mark, and that's that. So let me try to run this. You can see we have to position 0, we have 2, position 1, we have 5, position 2, we have 10, and so on. Having said that, I'm going to quickly show you in a couple of minutes how to use list comprehension to do this same thing. This comprehension allows us to write these 2 lines of code in just a single line. All right. And this is going to make it a little bit readable and kind of elegant. The way list comprehension works in Python, it's kind of very simple, but a little tricky. All right, let me show you. Say we want to create another list from this list, right? And how do we iterate over this list? What do we need to do? We say num2. Watch this. What we're going to be declaring first is the output, which is, say I want to declare item, or say I to the power of 2. We now say for I in range. But now I need to enclose this in square brackets to show that it's a list comprehension. I'm really sorry for that. All right, square bracket open and close the square bracket. So we say for I in range, that's the length of the list. Then we're going to be printing out I to the power of 2. Mind you, the high here we are printing out is the index, right, to the power of 2. So if I run this, you see that it's going to give me 0, 1, 4, because we are trying to run or print out the index, and right now it's not the value. So let me try this out. Sorry, I need to print num2. Print num2. Right, you can see that what we have modified is the index and not the value itself or the values. I used to make this mistake a lot of times, but right now I've gotten over it. So if you want to iterate and iterate over this list and modify the values, all we need to do is we're going to say num1, that's the name of the list, then open square brackets I, which is the index value, right, to iterate over each element. Right. So you can see that the elements has been modified. The elements in the list have been modified to give us 4, 25, 100, 36, 49, 121, and 9801, because we have decided to modify this to the power of 2. So that's how to use list comprehension. Another thing we can do with list comprehension is we can filter this out. All right, let's use another list. Let's say we're going to be using range from 1 through to, say, 21. And what we want to filter out in this list of number is, let's try to filter out the odd numbers, right? We then say if, for filtering, you have to use the if statement. If, no, sorry, if I, now it's just I because we don't have any list. Our list will be created using this range function. So if I modulo, I think we saw this in my previous video. If I modulo 2 is equal to 0, then we're going to print. You notice that in this one, I don't have to indicate the print function. List comprehension understands that in the first statement. All right. So how it goes is we have the loop, the condition, then we have the output. We've only printed out the even numbers. Do you get? Now, if I want to print out the odd numbers, what do? I just modify this by saying if I modulo 2 is not equal to 0, the not equal to operator, like I discussed in my logical operator incident in the last video. I'll put the link in the description below so you can review it. And if I try to print this will give me the odd numbers in the lists. All right, let me run this again. You can see that's printed 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and so on. So that's how list comprehension works. Before I wrap up this video, I'd like to show you 4 list methods more that you might find very useful in the future. Right? These methods are the index method. Number 2 is the count method. Okay, let me just show you the example while I mention the methods. Right? Say if I want to check the index of say 7, all I just need to do is say type in num1 dot index of 7. All right, so if I print, let me enclose this in the print function so that I can get the index of this element. 7 is in the position 6, right? That's the index method. There's another method which is the count method. Okay, let me show you the count method last. Let's quickly go to the sort method. If I want to sort this lists, like set it in order from the least to the largest, what I need to do is say num1 dot sort. Please don't forget the brackets. Then I now print num1. You see that the list has been sorted in ascending order. Like that's why you have 2, 2, 5, 5, 6, 10, 10, 10, 6, 7, 10, 10, 11, and 9. Then there's another method, which is the reverse method that will reverse the order of the lists. What I just need to do is just the same thing, just to change the sort method here to reverse. And that's it. If I run this again, as simple. Instead of from 2, the list now starts from the end, which is from 99, 11, 10, and so on. Then the last one I would like to show you is the count method. That's the count method allows me to check the number of occurrence of an element in a list. How does it work? Let me show you this in the IDE. So we're going to be using the for loop, and let's have it like this. Say for I in, we'll need the range to learn for I in the length of the lists. What do we need to print out? Let me just create a statement that shows me that this element, that each of the elements occurs as a certain number of times in the list. So I'm going to be using the F string. Then I'll say item in position curly brace high, cause then another curly brace num1 the count, then close bracket num1, then square bracket I, of course dash times in 1. So if I print this out, you see the output that is going to tell us that, okay, let me just print it out straight. It tells us that item in position 2, which is 2, occurs 2 times in num1. Item in position 1, 5, occurs 2 times. Item in position 2, which is 10, occurs 2 times. Item in position 3 occurs, that's 5, occurs 2 times. item in position 4, which is 2, occurs 2 times. Then item in position 5, which is 6 here, occurs 1 time in the list. So that's how the count method works. Okay, that's it on this video. I hope you have learned something, and I hope you really enjoyed this class a bit. And I would appreciate you to like my video, to like my channel, subscribe. And at the same time, if you have any question you want me to answer or something you think I should do better, I wouldn't mind your comments, please, because it's going to do me a whole lot in improving on the videos. So I would appreciate your comment. Thank you very much for watching this video. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now, and God bless you.